Hi guys, welcome to my new video on Docker volumes. This is one of the very important topic you should be aware of before starting writing actual Docker code. So let's begin. And as part of this video, what I'll explain about is what is Docker volume is and why do we need Docker volume. So agenda for this will be what is the problem without Docker we face if we don't have Docker volumes? What are the problems or challenges are there? Then volume, I'll introduce about what volume will do and how it will solve that problem with that. And different types of volumes also we have and what is the purpose of each one for different scenarios, that also I'll talk about in this. So problem with Docker volume. So in my previous video, I explained about something about the layered architecture of a container or layered architecture of a image, where what happens is, so let's go to the next slide. So this is a Docker container basically. If you see, this is totally a layered architecture. What is a layered architecture is like Ubuntu is the base image. Consider, for example, we have a Spring Boot application or just a Java application. You want to Dockerize that and then run it. So what it will have is, it will have a base image of Ubuntu or Linux base image. Over that it will have your jar file. Consider the first layer in this is a jar file. Then you have some more dependency, dependent environment, jar files or JDBC driver, those things will be. So everything is a layered architecture here. So everything you set up as part of your Docker image, and while running it, those image layers are utilized, as well as whatever you make changes at runtime is written to a writable layer. So container will have read-only layer, which is the base definition you define, and over that it will attach a writable layer. So every time when you start a container, it will have a writable layer attached to it. But problem with this one is, this is tightly coupled with the container lifecycle. Once the container dies, this writable layer is no more visible, no more, you cannot access that. So this data goes, and container dies in the sense is container is removed, not stopped, but container is totally removed, then the data is lost. So in that way, Docker containers without this volume or with this writable layer is not at all good for any persistent based application. What will happen is, if you make a persistent based application, like consider a database that has to write the data into the Docker container, then the data will be lost after the container is stopped. And as we know, Docker containers are just VMs or something, so we cannot make a guarantee that it will be keep on running. Sometimes in life cycle it will die and we have to restart it. In that scenario, those data, whatever the populated data or whatever the data we have, is lost. So that is a big problem with Docker container. To solve that, what we have is Docker volume. Docker volume comes in picture to solve that kind of persistent based problems, where what we can do is persisting in the current host machine. So we can give a drive or we can give a folder where we can store the data in the host machine. So while starting the container, you define a directory structure, say that whatever the container is using data can be persisted inside that particular host machine directory. So in that way, the data is persisted. The data is persisted over a directory structure, and even if the container dies, your data will be persisted and you can have access to whatever the file changes happen. So this way volumes helps. So sharing between container also, like you have multiple containers, container 1, container 2, everyone wants to use some common data or some common things in a place. Then you can utilize that by using a volume. By creating a volume, you can share it between multiple containers as well. And also in some scenario, what we have to do is, like, we have to pre-populate some data. In that cases also, it is very good that outside volume you can populate it, and while running the application you can just attach it to that one. So in that way also this is helpful, pre-populating the file system or dependency before the container starts, and it helps into reducing the start time also. The container start times become very less in that way. And also exporting logs. So like you have a log file keep on generating in that particular container, and you want to have that access of that log file, then you can export that log by using Docker volumes concept also. One more important thing I want to give just heads up here is about the Docker plugins. So by using Docker plugin, so whatever we discussed right now is all about a Docker host machine. So volumes, whatever data you are persisting inside the current host machine. So if you want to move that data from that host machine to some remote server or some remote architecture, then you have plugins for that one. You can enable that plugin and utilize that plugin for creating that data. Like consider one example. I have a different Linux machine which is sitting somewhere else, and one host machine which is a Docker host machine. There I have container running. I want to send all my data to another machine which is not local and which is not part of the Docker network also. Then what I will do is I can use that SSH based file system, or a plugin is available where you can connect to that remote machine, and then you can store that data into that by using the volumes concept. That example I'll give in another next video. I'll give that live example where you can have this SSH file system and connect to that container. So after that, what are the different types of volumes we have? This is also one of the important thing you should understand, and in which scenario we should go for which one also, that also understanding you should have. So different types of volume. So first is volume is there, which is by default like by using the -v tag or -- volume tag, you can create a volume. So then we have mount tag also. So there is a basic difference between volume and mount tag. Is both purposes same, only that you can create a directory structure and then you can assign a volume name to it. But there is a little bit of difference here in volume and mount. Is what is the difference is, volume is always it uses the directory structure which is owned by your Docker system, like var live docker. There only you can have this volumes. So inside that folder you can create your own folder, and that can be utilized as a volume. But mount can mount any drive from the host machine. Sometimes this is dangerous, that you are mounting to a root directory system or something, but this is useful when you don't want only inside the volumes, but you want the file system from outside the volume of Docker. Then you can use for the mount way. And then we have one more type of volume, which is tempfs. Tempfs is basically a temporary file system. This is useful when you have a scenario where you don't want to persist some data. The data is required for running the container, but that is not important data. So in that case you can use tempfs. What it helps is, instead of storing inside a Docker volume or Docker writable layer, it stores into tempfs file system. That helps to increase the performance. As you are not writing onto the Docker container writable layer, you are just using a temporary file system. This speed ups your application performance. And if you have only in-memory kind of requirement, then you can go with this tempfs file system or tempfs volumes. So the external file system, as I told before, that we can extend different plugins, and by using those plugins we can connect to like SSH based file system, Azure based file system, AWS S3. So we have pre-built drivers as well, and also we can use some existing library from Docker, and we can create our own plugins as well for creating a file system or for using that file system that is available. So basically this is the file system or volumes architecture we have. So one container can have either the bind mount point, which is anywhere in the file system. You can see anywhere in the file system. So bind mount point can bind it to anywhere in the host machine. And then we have volumes, which is only inside the Docker area, only inside the Docker area, which is whatever the Docker folder you have assigned, like var live docker. Inside that only the Docker container can create their directory and utilize it. Then we have tempfs, which will be temporary memory. That is good for that we are not writing data to the writable layer of the container, but storing that into temp memory. So these are the top level types of volume. In my next video, I'll give live example of these all, and I'll showcase how to utilize those. So how many ways we can create a volume is, first we can use directly at runtime, like when we are running a container, that time we can give -v or -mount option, and we can attach a volume or we can create a new volume. So this is the command for that one, docker run image id, whatever the unique image id you have, and after that -v and the host machine location. So this will be always appended by your host machine driver folder, whatever the default driver you have attached for that docker host machine, that will be appended inside that one. And the container location is like after runtime, what location that files will be shared between. Like consider /app is the folder where you want to mount all the files from your volume, then you can have the /app in the container location. And after that one more colon is there, and the third option is you can provide the type of access, like read only, read write, this kind of operation you can define with the option stack. Then we have second way is, as I told, we can use the mount option. In the mount option we have key value pair definition, source, you can define this what source directory you want, and the target what target directory you want, and options, again options here, what type of permission you want to give it to that particular folder. Then we have another type, which is, as I told, like we can give the tempfs file system also. This is the command for that, creating a tempfs file system, type equals to tempfs, and then you have to give the container destination location, like which location of the container /app or /something that will be used in the temp file system. So these are the way we can create at the runtime. While running the container, we can give this options. Another is we can create it before as well, so that we will create the volume, and then at the time of running we can just attach it. So docker create volume and then --name, and you can define the name. So this way we can create volumes. That is all for this video. As part of next video, I'll explain live example on creating volumes, and also I'll help you to see some examples on Docker plugin like SSH based file system, AWS based file system, local versus remote file system. That's all I have for this video. Thank you for watching.